Hi, I'm Sam Shapiro, head of school for the Marin Montessori School, and welcome to a very special Grounded and Soaring episode, a conversation with Dr. Alex Curtis, who heads the storied New England boarding school, Choate Rosemary Hall. This is a discussion about how he and his school community have been grappling with the role of artificial intelligence in education. It's telling that Dr. Curtis uses the word grappling intentionally, not embrace, not reject, but grappling. And we recorded this conversation for a special reason. In just a few days, Marin Montessori will be hosting a panel discussion all about the future. And one of the panelists on our stage will be Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, the company that has given us ChatGPT. At this event, our own school community will be wrestling together with a number of the big, thorny questions that the advent of ChatGPT has brought forth. We, of course, don't know for certain the multidimensional impacts of AI on our children's futures. And while the educators at Choate High School have a different focus, as their students are at a different age and stage of development than ours here at Marin Montessori School, we each bring a powerful focus on the habits of mind our students will certainly need as they navigate the rapidly changing world. At Marin Montessori, we'll continue to harness the power of our students' inborn curiosities and foster creative problem solvers and lifelong learners. We're confident these are the habits of minds that will serve them best in their futures. And the textures and the shapes of those futures are certainly filled with much opacity. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Dr. Curtis as much as I did. In addition to serving as the head of school for Choate Rosemary Hall, Dr. Curtis is also the board chair of the Association of Boarding Schools and the Connecticut Association of Independent Schools. He is a trustee of the Fay School, and Dr. Curtis earned his PhD in architectural history from Princeton University. Enjoy. Well, Alex, thank you so much for joining us on Grounded and Soaring. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you as an educational leader who, with the onset of ChatGPT, my understanding is really brought an open mind to it. And as the leader of one of the top boarding schools in the country, very interested to learn your perspective on the dawn of AI and ChatGPT, and kind of also block and tackling what's it look like on the ground for you at Choate. So welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled. I mean, you're doing amazing work, and you've got exciting things on the horizon, and it's fun to talk across the age groups as well. So I'm looking forward to it.
You know, the overarching question, Alex, for this conversation is: to what extent does this technology, namely ChatGPT and AI, challenge the purpose of education? It kind of brings up the question: why school? What is school for?
Yeah.
That's the big question overarching it. But I wonder if we can just start more kind of on the ground with a location question, which is, you know, about yourself and about Choate as well. But so before the release of ChatGPT, what had been your general attitude around the value of digital technology in secondary education?
Yeah, I mean, we have felt very committed to that. I mean, that sort of meant that our approach when ChatGPT sort of appeared on the scene was pretty clear to us, because we've been so committed for such a long time. It's embedded into the culture of the school. There was a point in my earliest teaching career where we were always ahead of our students. You know, and technology, there was a lot of barriers, it was expensive. You know, that changes 2007 iPhones, 2010 iPads, prevalence of, certainly laptops to a certain extent, but really I would say the last 15, 20 years, you've seen that explosion. Whereas as a teacher, you can't be competitive with your students on technology. You've actually got to be welcoming to them to maybe bring something new to you, or be willing to experiment, and avoiding it doesn't work. So that was sort of, to us, never on the table. Our students are absolutely in this world. Mm-hmm. So we were never, we're going to ban this for a period of time school. We sort of feel with the pace of change of technology that if you adopt some of the methods that you might have had before, which was let some people try it out, see what works, be a medium to late adopter because it's all worked out, let other people do the work. A, that feels ethically questionable. But B, by the time it's worked out, we've already moved to the next thing.
Right.
And so we are willing to learn as we go. Not if it's going to negatively impact kids, not if it's going to make the classroom, more friction full instead of frictionless. Not if it's going to slow down the rate of learning. Then we better be ready. But if it's things that even if they move 50% of the potential, 100%, but if they move in a positive direction, we're going to take it on.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I'm getting the worldview, which is a very forward-leaning, optimistic. Let's be brave. The
Just
word
be
brave.
brave. Yeah. Your approach to AI technology, ChatGPT, has to be, I think, in keeping with the larger approach to the school. So you can't be a school that suddenly says to the students, "We're going to make every decision in your life. You're going to be locked down. You have no free." But in this area, oh yes, we're going to give you all these freedoms. I think it has to be part of. I would say to be the most successful part of a culture that says you have agency, you have some role to play in how your teaching, your learning, and your living happens.
So maybe you could take us to the moment or the period when ChatGPT was introduced. If you go back to that, it wasn't long ago.
Yeah.
What was your response? What was Choate's response? And then as a school leader in this last year, how have you been thinking about AI and ChatGPT in education in general?
It's really interesting when you have um, the collision of a school year with the calendar of the outside world.
Hmm.
We are so, you know, I think this is true of all schools. We kind of have a rhythm, right? Which is, this summer we get some things ready. We introduce new ideas to in our training at it, we set up our professional development through the year. There's often themes for the year, and as you hit the winter, we start planning for the next year, and the spring. So ChatGPT hitting in November of 22, right, was not great timing for that calendar year. There wasn't a lot of bandwidth in, sort of January of 23 to be, kind of seeing this thing that was being announced in the tech world and people were going along with it. So I do think we were, along with pretty much everyone so many people that I know, not as on the money in that winter and spring of 23 as we couldn't. We know some of our students were bringing it to our attention or trying it out. So we did think about, this is something we've got to get onto. And so for us, it was actually that our senior team, we had decided to go, we do a retreat each year, and we decided to go down to Vanderbilt University, where there's, I've a couple of our folks are involved in it. I've done some guest teaching in their master's program, independent school leadership. Carrie Grimes runs down there. So we knew we were going down there for that. And as we got into that spring, we said, could we add AI to this piece? It was like this addition to it. And that was the life-changing moments that we kind of got through the spring. I've been experimenting. I got online. I'd sort of seen some of that. I had some idea. But we met with a professor down there, Andy Van Schack, who we've worked with a lot moving forward. And Andy came in and we did pretty much most of a day on ChatGPT 101, 102, 201. I mean, and what it meant for the school. And we went to dinner that night with this. It was the moment of it was a Rubicon moment. Our life just changed. Are we a school that's going to wait to see how this plays out? Or we're a school that's going to embrace and think about what we do? So we made the decision down there of what's going to be the next steps. We're going to get as much data, as much information as we can, and we're going to provide that to our whole community. Interestingly, our whole community, not our teaching faculty alone. This is not a classroom issue to us. This is the whole school, or every adult in the community, every office in the school, the business side of the operation, as well as the teaching side of the operation. So as much as we could. So what was the professional development going to look like during the school year? But students were coming back in late August, early September. What policies, what of our existing academic policies would remain? What needed to be updated? And what would our expectations to be? So we really pivoted from, this is something we've got to think about. We're going to get through the year in June, really moving fast over the summer, and then embracing through the school year and growing as we've gone through. The biggest decision we made, though, we knew that there were schools out there that had decided to buy time by banning or by putting very restrictions. And the one decision we made was that we were not going to allow anyone to ban it. We do allow times. We knew from the beginning there might be an assignment. You say no ChatGPT on this, but you couldn't just do blanket bans and just pretend like it doesn't exist. We were not going to sort of walk away. And we decided that the earlier we got involved, the more time we'd have to learn. And Jenny Elliott, who's the head of student academic life, so very much the day-to-day of the school, said, we're going to use the word term grapple. We're going to grapple with this. You hear a lot of embrace as a word. She said, I don't know whether we're ready to embrace yet. We don't know what it is. You don't know what it is. You're going to work out. You're going to push. You're going to pull. You're going to work through it. And I think for our faculty, that was a good term, because it didn't say we decide this is undoubtedly a good thing that will be taken on board in every possible way. We actually said there's some things we're going to like. There's some things we may not like, and there's some difficult questions we're going to deal with.
I really honor that term grapple and that approach. And I think grappling is the right way to think about these moments, which is that there are going to be some things that we love, but let's not be so Pollyanna.
Right.
Believe that then makes us blind or defensive around really addressing and seeing the problematic aspects.
As you sit in that moment and you think about how long have we got, you can't help but reflect on the previous moments that felt or looked like that, and whether we miss those moments. And to me, the iPhone is the best example that I could not see any of the negatives that we've seen now. Could anybody? Right. And so for me, that technology came along and I was like on board. Fabulous. I was going to have it was Steve Jobs. I was going to have the 3 devices in my pocket. I'd have the best, camera I could use. I'd have all this device, and I didn't plan enough ahead to see the invasiveness, the impact. Frankly, I'm trying to buy into the not turning my phone on for the first hour of the day to give my brain a charge. The last hour, getting away from the blue light. We were completely oblivious to that. And by the way, no idea that social media was going to take over that device and bring all of the things that we now know is going on. So what that said to me was a world where I am new technology I'm excited by is generally unequivocally good. I think if you look back, you have to get out of that world and realize that there's going to be significant downsides. I think this one's a little easier because science fiction has been worried about AI, artificial intelligence, AI, dystopian, robotic futures. And so I think we have some ideas within the scope of the human brain and its imagination of at least some of the ethical questions or moral questions we may face, or some of the downside. But I go into this with, trying to reflect on the regrets of the previous one, that we didn't slow down. We didn't sort of stop and say, should all of our kids have iPhones immediately? Like if we'd all said in 2012, every kid under the age of 13 should not be allowed an iPhone, period, which we kind of know now, right? If not 16, but for sure before that stage. And that would have helped a lot of people who are dealing with some significant issues now. And I don't know how to know that equivalent.
Right.
Don't know. But boy, I want to keep my eyes wide open for indications instead of looking back 10 years later and saying, gosh.
And when you think then, as the leader of Choate, and you take a very brave, optimistic approach to new technologies with this, very realistic understanding there's going to be downsides as well. What's exciting to you in terms of the classroom experience, or what's exciting from the student learning perspective about ChatGPT and AI to you?
I mean, the opportunities do feel limitless. I do feel like there's just extraordinary things that we can do. And I'm already seeing our teachers do things. So let's start first with the opportunity for personalized learning that, is at the heart of, schools like ours. Small classrooms matter because we're not lumping students, in together and expect them to move with the speed of the pack. But nevertheless, there is that element of doing that. And look, that's one of the reasons why we liked iPads. That's one of the reasons we like, YouTube for learning, why we like the opportunity for students to go back and look at material on their own. I just walked into a group of students leaving a physics test and thinking about the dread that gave me and why. And I got into teaching because I reflected on great teachers that I had, and frankly, even more on the bad teachers I had. I was not good at physics because my high school physics teacher was appallingly bad. He stood at the front of the classroom, droned on for an hour and 20 minutes at his pace. And if you couldn't keep up, and I lost concentration, I lost interest, and he was great for the top third of the class and the rest of us got lost. And I was never inspired. But I had an ancient history teacher who lit the subject up for me. He took time to discuss it with me. I just what made me want to learn more and change my life, right? And art history in similar ways. And I often reflect upon, was physics never going to be my thing? Or if I'd had a great teacher, I have a certain level of intelligence, I'd like to think, right? Was I inspired because that's built in because of teachers? And yes, I think some things I see better, but I think I probably could have done physics better. And if I'd have had the opportunity to watch those recordings, a couple of times, ChatGPT means that I could have gone back and said, I did not understand, Newton's second law, go over it with me, which part, and be able to question and go back and fill in those gaps. Just as incredible. Ask me 5 questions to test my knowledge of it. Like that just feels an additional piece that doesn't take the place of the teacher, but can take some of the most basic things from a teacher. So now I can walk in, and if I've got 20 minutes with a faculty member or half an hour, we're not wasting time on some things that I could get out of the way, but actually could move on to more interesting concepts. Or, I could ask the questions that relate to what we did in class, to that experiment that ChatGPT may not know about. So that feels amazing. And then, on the essay one's really interesting because, we're very clear. We haven't had to change a lot of our academic integrity policy because we've always had a position. If someone else writes your paper, that's against our academic code. So it doesn't matter whether it's you writing it for me or ChatGPT, they're both equally wrong. But we also have always had a peer review part of it. And we've also had things that if you acknowledge help, you've always been able to go to the library and say, I went to the librarian or I went to this teacher. And so a lot of our policy towards AI has been about acknowledgement. And so we say to our faculty members, if you don't want them getting that help, in the same way you'd say, don't go to the library for this, or don't go to a peer, it's got to be your own work in 30 minutes, without any outside help. This just fits into that. But there are times when you can say, this is going to provide extra information. And I think on that essay, one of the great things, I do it, is you put it in and say, what are your 4 takeaways from this piece of writing? Where are the strengths of it? To be able to get back, we have a great writing tutors, but they have their set hours. And I think to say to ChatGPT, put yourself in the position of a high school writing tutor and give me feedback on this essay. And if you turn that in the same time as the essay, you say to the teacher, this is, this is the feedback I got, and this is how I responded to it. That if learning processes matter, not the final product, and the processes matter, that you are increasing the way that those processes work. And in fact, you can cut out some of the boring part of it. That actually, if sometimes the writing of the 20-page paper matters, the actual physical act, but actually sometimes gathering all the information, synthesizing it, and coming up with the big ideas is enough. To me, unleashing creativity in our teachers, some of the things that they would love to do, but simply they don't have time to do it.
So I taught to freshman humanities Macbeth for many, many, many years. So I love teaching it every year. It was always frustrating, but I had my points and I had my interpretations. So as a teacher, I could put a passage from Macbeth in and say, give me 3 different commentaries and interpretations of this passage. And I could present it to my students and ask them to grapple with it and stress test each one and comment on each one.
Right.
Apply their knowledge into understanding and demonstration of understanding. Is that the idea?
It's completely. And I'm still at the moment where I don't mind that there's hallucinations, as they call them, where it's an error. First of all, it means our students, they can't say, give me a reading. A student can't say, give me a reading list and get 5 books out and pretend they've read all 5 of them, because the chances of, especially in 3.5, but even in 4, one of them being made up remains high. Right. So it doesn't mean you have to check all these things. But also just, it's not bad that there are straight up errors, because that's one of the things that we can say to our students is like, when you get an answer out of ChatGPT, be a discerning user. Right. It's any piece of evidence. So you might get those 3 answers that came out of that passage, and one of them may be completely wrong right now. Now, that's not going to stick around for a while, because that's not in any of the tech companies' interest to have a flawed product. But what it is, it actually adds a kind of human dynamic to it. It enables faculty members really to think about very directed goals in something. So rather than having one assignment that has to cover all these goals, there may be one where you really want them to concentrate on writing for a little bit. And
Mm,
we don't really need them to think of the topic. That actually is going to take up 2 class periods that you don't need them to do. We can
mm,
go and say, have ChatGPT give you 3 topics, write on one of them, right? And so we've eliminated, we can hone in on something, or we might decide that actually all that matters is coming up with the idea, and the writing part is secondary. You don't want to get in the way. We want to see it. So we might do a thing where we say, come up with 3 ideas as a student, and have ChatGPT write the essay, and you can see how your idea, how your topic sentence played out.
mm, mm.
And now you've taken your ability, to execute on that, how tired you are, how much time you've got, out of the mix. Because what we really want to know is, was that a great idea?
Mm.
Another point when the writing might matter. So all those things matter, and all the parts of learning continue to be in place, but you have more opportunity to break it down.
So these are the really hopeful aspects that you're seeing, and they're really resonating as you're talking about them. I'm curious what's giving you pause. You talked about, not wanting to bring maybe the same level of rosiness, pure rosiness you brought to
Yeah.
the iPhone. Or do you already have some predictions or some sort of question marks that are giving you pause?
Yeah, I mean, I was bothered last year. I felt like, sort of my news feed reflected that the world had woken up to large language models, kind of as the school year ended, that April, May period. And every article was, every student's cheating using it. They're all writing their essays. Every college kid's, not thinking anymore. It's all, and I felt like there was a lot of clickbait on that. And I thought it was, and that caused this reaction. We were just going to ban it.
Mm,
And I just felt that that was overreactionary to kind of get everyone worked up. And in a little bit reflects a polarized world where you say something that's just, kind of reflects one worldview, and gets everybody worked up. And most things out there, the worldview, the real view is somewhere in the middle. You can have it write your essay for it, and you can have it turn something in, and you can have it do certain levels of research. So again, I don't think it's something new. You used to be able to go to the library, pick out a book, and copy out a passage. You probably didn't get caught because it's hard to search that, right? You could go to Google and find the piece, and generally, if you changed enough words, I mean, I'm giving a primer here on how to cheat, which is probably not the best thing, but if you, and so you have to me, and all those things, you have to go back to why do people cheat, and it's often because they were not inspired by the subject. They didn't have enough time. They were in crisis. They didn't know where to go to get help. It was normally a desperation thing. They're very. I mean, I do have great faith in young people, as kids, your age, but with students at my school at the age that they aren't bad. They don't want to do bad things. They make poor choices, and so often it's around the quality of the assignment, or the time that's given, or the place that they find themselves, or the pressure they put themselves. So let's try and address those issues. But nevertheless, while those issues remain, worry about the world. Are they going to get into the thing they want to do next, the program at the school? Those things probably aren't ever going to completely go away. So in that way, ChatGPT remains a risk, and we need to be ready for that. I think there's been significant ethical, moral issues raised in terms of where the material is coming from. I think for people that do believe in the importance of kind of basic academic principles, like doing your own work, it's very worrying that there may have been material scraped without people's permission, and we may be taking advantage of that. I think we as a school, want to grapple with that. Despite the sort of leap forward, it's going to surprise you with that, what I'm about to say. And I don't mean to disparage the incredible work that people in the field are doing, and where they've gone, and it's extraordinary. It's still not at an A level. It actually is only so good. I think there's really interesting questions. Like, if you've been in a self-driving car, that technology moved really, really fast, but getting the last, and it's sort of like delivery, the last mile, the last 5% is really, really hard. You can do most case scenarios that are predictable, but the road that isn't quite where it's supposed to be. The stop sign that's been turned slightly, and a human brain. I think on one of the drives I take regularly, there's a road that comes at a very steep angle, and the stop sign almost faces the road that you're coming to. Now, as a human driving on that, I know without any thought that is for the road that's approaching. But if you're in a self-driving, a car that's using, that technology like a Tesla, it is mathematically close enough that it is almost impossible for it, without the larger context, to work out that stop sign isn't stopping you from that road that's coming in, that is actually for the other road. And I every time I drive past that, I reflect upon that of like, how is these amazing engineers, and they are fantastic, but how are they going to do that last touch that I can do subconsciously, the human brain can do? It's going to be very hard to do that last part. And I do think that is very positive, actually, in terms of it leaves place for human beings.
Right.
That's really the biggest negative question. It's like, what are we about?
I mean, it brings up the question, what does it mean to be human?
What does it mean to be human? And I think I'm excited that where we are now, it is unleashing the pieces of it human, which is creativity, which is human connection. Schools matter even more because we've got to concentrate on the human skills. Final part I would say is the convergence of all these technologies that actually, you can't talk about AI without talking about social media. You can't talk about it without thinking about sort of robotics, the internet more generally, pressure on young people, polarization, discourse. All of those things fit together. Like we spend a lot of time talking about respectful discourse. We spend a lot of time talking about thinking critically about the data you're getting. And so that AI is another example of, a bot producing something on Twitter. Well, AI is going to produce speeches that look like they came from me, you, the president, whoever it is. And so actually taking time to say, is this thing real or not? We've got to double down on their skills to be able to do that. So to me, actually, it's very hard to talk about AI in isolation. It's absolutely fundamentally one of the bigger issues we face, which is good.
Yeah. Thank you for that summary. It reminds me of in preparation for our panel speaker that will include Sam Altman, Zoe Hitzig, who's a fellow of economics at Harvard. We were doing a pre-call, and she talked about, the way that you're talking about it, Sam, or we're talking about it, seems very deterministic. Like there's this thing called AI that we're all just going to be pulled through. We are the humans that are creating this experience.
Right.
And so when I hear you speak, Alex, is reminding me of that power of agency, like that you and Choate are really diving into this and owning it, as opposed to being too fearful or paralyzed by it. So as a final question, Alex, just pulling back and thinking, most of our listeners are parents interested in parenting and also how to understand the dawn of ChatGPT and AI in their parenting. So what do you wish both parents, but also educators would consider, but really think about parents too right now, regarding this time today and preparing their children for the future, the very opaque future, really?
I go back to fundamental principles and again, what we miss with social media. And that starts with what's age appropriate. We now know, we have a much better idea now with kind of a real world experimentation on a generation of kids, which is tragic. But if we don't take advantage of that, we've not, it's all for nothing. So we know things like, when students should be, how long and when they should be in front of screens, when they should be independently, when they should have their own, phone, whether that's, maybe it should be flip phones at a certain age so they can communicate and then more responsibility. And that goes with things like free play and independence, when that gets brought on. And so to me, you just add AI into those questions. Those questions, at what point should we be letting them getting online and in what ways? I don't think AI in the way that the social media can take over friendship. There are going to be bots that you can have, your best friend can be, AI. I think as parents, we shouldn't be in the same way not knowing what our kids are doing online. We shouldn't be not knowing what they're doing in an AI world. And so I come back to be involved, monitor, understand, put parental locks and guidance on those things, and be the partner with other parents so that you're all doing similar things and do what's age appropriate, there are going to be amazing opportunities. I do think not to take advantage of, when a student is struggling with math or spelling or whatever it may be, as a kindergartner or a third grader, not to make use of AI is crazy, but to give them access to everything in ChatGPT at 8 years old is the same as giving them access to a smartphone or all of, an 11-year-old should not be, I don't think, unfettered on Instagram, nor should they be unfettered on ChatGPT. So I would just say to them, learn the age appropriate moments to use these technologies, and don't use them as shortcuts that solve a problem today, because long days, short years, right? And so solving the problem for today, if you do it every single day, it's going to have a negative impact over a long period of time. So be thoughtful and work with your school, and listen to what they're saying about what we think is age appropriate, and don't ignore what we now have really good evidence is healthy and what's not healthy. So use it, but also get your kids outside, get them in nature.
Double clicking on a note you made around looking for a school that prepares children for the future in which we don't know what careers will look like. What are those qualities that you'd most want to see the schools develop in children to prepare them for that very opaque future?
Right. I want to make sure that there's a lot of things that are kind of imbalanced that seem like opposites. So I want to make sure that student can work successfully on their own. They can take something on, they can work through it, they can stick to it. So what are the projects, what are the assignments that enable them to do that? I would get in specific in that. But the exact opposite also needs to be true. I want to know that they're doing things where they can work collaboratively in a group, that they can negotiate who's doing what, who's taking leadership, that they can learn, skills like when someone doesn't pull their weight, what that means, and that there's ramifications, that there's impact of good work and not so good work. So I want to make sure that they can work in those two ways. I want to make sure that they are resilient, that they face challenges and they have to work through them, that they have to take agency. And I think, again, all these things can happen age appropriately in different ways, but they have to take agency to some extent, that they know they're not alone, but someone's not always clearing up for them and coming in and solving the problem for them. But that sometimes they can work through it on their own. Sometimes they need to go to some side, from a very young age, but all the way through, high school into college, there's going to be moments where, they're going to feel better about their success if they've earned it. And if they earn it by doing something difficult, and if they know they've had people alongside them, but not that those people have done it for them. And it's just very easy to do those things. I'm very interested. I mean, we could have a whole nother podcast on built spaces and how they work, and particularly kind of where adults are. As I would go through and look at a school, I'd look for, I'm passionate about signage. How many times are there signs telling everybody everything they need to do? Go in here, don't do this, don't do that, don't do the other, as opposed to things that trust students, allow them to have agency, to make their own rules. Does the playground have 30 rules that doesn't allow them to, or does it have the minimum number of rules so students can find so young people can find their way? Similarly, in a classroom, are we mandating everything for a 14-year-old and not giving them any space to have agency? What point are they having independent time, or are they being watched every moment of it? And I'll just end by, more important than anything else, I want to just see smiles and joy, because if schools aren't joyful, and it sounds obvious, but I've walked through way too many schools where the kids just look scared and worried because the assignment and how they're having to dress or to keep up with the social pieces. If they're not, watch how they're interacting when you're not watching. If that's happening, you're probably okay.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much for that. That's a beautiful way to close the conversation.